If you're into the world of interior design, you've likely heard this phrase cookie cutter home. It's used to describe homes like this one, which is my new home that I have bought and now live in. And I get why some people use it. Yes, my home looks like my neighbour's home, we have the same exterior, the same floor plan. However, I've always felt the term cookie cutter came with an unnecessarily negative connotation about such homes. So, what if my house looks like my neighbour's house? I'm proud to own this home. So, in this first video on my new YouTube channel, I want to give you 5 reasons why I'm hella proud to own a cookie cutter home. And while I do, I'll show you some B-roll of the house while it's empty. Please excuse the rather amateur gimbal shots. Alright, let's go. Reason number 1, owning any property in this economy is a huge achievement for anyone these days. I feel extremely lucky and proud of the fact that my wife and I are in a strong enough financial position to take out a mortgage and buy a house. That is really hard to do these days, and so if you are in a position to buy yourself a house, then there should be absolutely no shame in using that money to buy a new build home, because there's lots of great, sensible financial reasons as to why you'd want to buy a new build home over an older home, and we'll get into some more of those as we go through the list. Okay, so that brings me on to my second reason, which is that new build homes require way less renovation because they're built to suit modern lifestyles. One example that's really obvious is the fact that we have access to gigabyte internet and we have Ethernet ports that are wired into the living room and upstairs as standard. That's something which, if you wanted to install it in an older home, would require tearing through multiple walls. It would be a very expensive, huge amount of work to have something which, in my opinion, is absolutely essential for a lot of people these days. If you want to work from home, or you're a content creator, or you want to just enjoy modern forms of entertainment like gaming and streaming, and you want to do that with stable, reliable internet, without lag, without buffering, there's kind of no replacement for hardwired internet. Wi-Fi a lot of the time cuts out, it's unreliable. So having this kind of wired Ethernet built into the home as standard is a huge plus. Another less obvious example of this is the fact that the house comes with a kitchen peninsula. If you don't know the difference between a peninsula and an island, essentially a peninsula is an island that's attached to the side of the countertop, so only one side of it is exposed. A peninsula that's integrated into the same room as the dining area in a what some would call a semi-open floor plan is quite a modern concept. Most older homes, the ones which are supposedly more characterful, often don't have this convenience in them. And so the way that a lot of people are building in this kind of kitchen and dining semi-open floor plan experience is they're having to do massive renovations, usually in the form of a huge rear extension into the garden, which is not only expensive and a massive hassle, but also this extension is just as new built as these so-called cookie cutter homes that people criticize. And the reason why older homes don't have these semi-open floor plans is actually quite interesting. So it's because of the changing role of the cook in the household over time. So in the olden times, kitchens were sort of seen as something to be kept away, hidden in the back of the house. They were utilitarian spaces. They were often also only used by servants, or in most people's cases who didn't have servants, the women of the house. So they were sort of kept away in the corner in their own home. Now, this is obviously a massively outdated idea. It seems absurd in today's modern context for us to do that. And so in modern homes, the kitchen is part of the dining experience. The person who is cooking, in the case of our household, it's me most of the time. We can prepare ingredients while seeing and interacting with our family, with our guests in the dining area. This is a much more modern way of living. And because we've bought a new build home, that kind of layout is built in as standard. We don't have to do a massive renovation to achieve that. Now, let's change tack a bit and let's talk about heating. Laid under the willow tree. Modern homes are way more energy efficient than older homes. While I appreciate the aesthetic charm of a Georgian sash window, their inherent insulating properties are abysmal compared to these modern double or even triple glazing windows that come as standard in new build homes. On top of that, these older historical homes are often made of solid brick with no cavities. That leads to poor insulation. The high ceilings, which are revered by interior designers worldwide, While they may look beautiful, they actually also increase the heat loss of the room, which again makes your home energy inefficient. You may also lack modern insulation in your floors, in your roof, and you may have open fireplaces, which we'll get to in the next reason, which are very inefficient for heating. All of this means that your home ends up being really expensive to heat and run and often just feels cold, especially in the winter. In the UK, we have something called the EPC rating of a home. That's how energy efficient your home is. A typical Georgian home that hasn't had extensive renovation is probably at a D or an E or even worse, whereas my house is a B as standard. And that's not only great for my wallet in terms of energy bills for the many years I plan to live here, but it's also just way more comfortable to live in a nice, warm, cozy home, especially since I live in the UK where it's pretty darn cold for most of the year.
The last weekend of summer, the end.
Now, number four, let's talk about fireplaces because fireplaces, as beautiful as they are as much a curse as they are a blessing. So, fireplaces are often seen as one of the main pros of buying a historical home. The appeal of the fireplace is seen as very romantic, and to be honest, I get it. It's mesmerizing, the lick of the fire, the crickle crackle of the wood. It's like so cozy, it's so hygge. But let's be real, in modern life, a fireplace is massively impractical. For one, they're terribly inefficient because you have to have a chimney, which means you lose a bunch of heat from the fire through the chimney. And if the fireplace isn't lit, then that chimney is just a massive hole to the outside that makes your room freezing cold. And on top of that, you've got to keep fueling the fire with wood, which is just a huge pain in the ass. Who's got time to do that? And fires are also pretty bad for your health. They release a lot of pollutants into the air. They release a lot of what scientists call PM 2.5. Those are fine particles that are 2.5 micrometers or less, meaning that they're small enough to enter your lungs and your bloodstream, which causes respiratory and heart issues. They release nitrogen oxides, which can contribute to asthma, carbon monoxide, which is bad for your brain, cause dizziness, headaches, mental health issues. They also release polyacrylic aromatic hydrocarbons. These increase your risk of cancer. So there's lots of carcinogenous things in the air. And not to mention, all that soot from the fire is really bad for climate change and your lungs. So all in all, these are just like not good things. And if you use coal in your fire, it's even worse than compared to wood. So while I get the romanticism of a fireplace, it's really bad for your health and they're terribly inefficient. But not only that, when you try to design the floor plan of a living room, which is usually where you'd find the fireplace, you'll actually find that the fireplace is often an obstacle that gets in the way of a floor plan that makes sense. I'll probably make a whole video about this because I have a lot of thoughts about fireplaces in the living room. But if you try to design a modern living room that has a fireplace in it, you'll quickly realize that it causes a lot of problems. Why? Because the fireplace, because it's so big and it has, the fire and the heat coming from it, it demands to be a focal point in a room. But that makes sense in older living rooms when that was the only thing that people would focus on. But in modern living rooms, of course, we have a TV. And the TV also demands to be a focal point. You want to have seating that faces the TV. So, how do you square this circle? How do you deal with these two competing, very strong focal points? Well, most people would instinctively then put the TV above the fireplace to combine the focal points, and then you only have one. But if you watch interior design YouTube, you know that this is apparently the most sacrilegious interior design sin you can commit. So, as you can see, the fireplace, as beautiful as it looks, is terrible for your energy efficiency. It's terrible for your health, and it also makes your floor plan quite difficult to get right. So, for me, modern radiators found in new build homes are just a much more sensible way to go when it comes to heating your house. And in terms of creating the vibe of a fireplace, let's be honest, you can recreate 90% of the vibe of a fireplace by just lighting a few candles and turning the lights off. Someone had to say it, but it's true.
At our fingertips, the autumn to discover. If I would have had.
And the fifth reason why I love my new build home is that I find the challenge of designing a new build home very exciting. Some interior designers find it challenging to design a home with such a seemingly blank canvas. But I think it's exciting. With a new build, you can take the design in almost any direction: modern, postmodern, industrial, boho, minimalist, maximalist, whatever you want. You can take the design pretty much anywhere. The only exception to this, I think, would be to try and go all in a very traditional design. If you go all in on Rococo, for example, I don't care how much Lady Whistledown you read, this would look quite bizarre in a new build home. However, I see no problem in incorporating some traditional elements into a modern interior, things like wall moldings, antique pieces, to create a dynamic transitional space with great tension between the historical and the new. And that's exactly how I plan to design this home. So if you want to see how I do that, then please consider subscribing. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.